You're listening to the ADHD Support Talk Radio podcast. ADHD Support Talk is brought to you by addclasses.com. Visit www.addclasses.com and sign up for free webinars and online events today. Hello and welcome back to ADHD Support Talk Radio. I'm your co-host, Lynne Edris, and as a productivity and ADHD coach, I help overwhelmed professionals reduce procrastination, improve time management, and get more done with less effort so that they have more time, more energy, and even more money for what they love most. As you guys know, I'm a woman with ADHD myself, so I have been where so many of you are, and I've come out the other side, so to speak. So I've gone from living in that constant state of chaos and overwhelm and underperformance, we all know so well, to live a life of more success and fulfillment than I once dreamed was possible. And I really believe that every single one of you can share the same success yourselves. You can learn more about me and what I do and the programs and services I offer at my website. And if you sign up at www.timetothrivegroup.com, you can join my live free 5-week group coaching program with some of the top ADHD experts in the world starting January 11th. So just go to timetothrivegroup.com to save your spot in the live program today. Well, today I have with me Mr. Jim DeGaetano. And in a moment, Jim and I are going to talk about financial education, specifically teaching your kids about money and helping you help yourself better manage your money at the same time. I invited Jim to join me on the podcast because he's helped my husband and I personally, and with me with my business professionally. So Jim is actually not just our very smart and trusted financial advisor. He's a really good guy with a great mission that really aligns with what I do. And I know it will resonate with you guys, with our listeners. So welcome, Jim. I'm so glad to have you join us.
Hey, thanks, Lynn. I'm so glad to be here. Thank you so much.
I'm really excited for Jim. He's got some new things in the works. And one of them is something that I think is really missing. As you guys know, if you've been listening to the podcast, my kids are a little bit older. My son with ADHD is 25 now, married and doing his own thing. My daughter is 21. But one of the things that I realized when my kids were little, and Jim and I have spoken about this, is that there's not very much available to parents to help us teach our kids about money, right? A lot of schools have done away with a lot of their financial education programs. And if they do have them, they're not much, they don't spend a whole lot of time. And I think that this is the kind of education that needs to start early. And I'm fortunate that it's something that my parents taught me, but I know that that's not something that a lot of other kids learned. I know that it's something that a lot of my adults really struggle with, and that is money management. So tell us a little bit about what you have going on, Jim. Introduce yourself to the listeners and tell them where they can learn more about you.
Hey, thanks, Lynn. What a wonderful introduction. Thank you so much. Yes, we do have a lot going on this year. COVID has been very difficult, and when there were no sports on TV, I decided to write a couple books. So we have two different ends of the spectrum that I've written on. One has been kind of my lifelong journey of helping people where their life meets their finances, especially within the transition of retirement. And so I authored a book called The Fruitful Retirement, which is really geared toward those that are really close to retirement, a few years close, or recently retired. But what I've been told from people that have endorsed the book, that it actually could be for any age. So whether you are in your 30s or 40s or even early 50s and aren't planning to retire for a decade or more, I think you would get something out of the book. At least that's what's been told to me. On the other end of the spectrum is something I'm very passionate about, and that is financial literacy. Lynn, you really hit the nail on the head, and that is that our national curriculum does not include educating our young generation on money and savings in particular. If you go to college, it's not likely that you're going to learn a lot about finances there unless you actually major in finance or accounting. And so something that came out recently, and a lot of neuroscience has been suggesting this for a while, but looking at how our brains are formed, the University of Cambridge came out with a study that suggested kids' habits are pretty much formed by the age of 7. So here I am as a financial expert running a wealth management firm, understanding the statistics that 85% of Americans are ill prepared for retirement. And we don't have a collegiate system that really teaches them. They're not taught in high school. So how would they be prepared? Absent parental involvement, who really is their first teacher, or profits such as Junior Achievement and some other ones that come in and educate in conjunction with the schools, but not all school districts have that capability. Or people coming across people like myself that can help others get educated during their lives. So I decided to start looking at books to teach them their very elementary lessons just about money at their age. I have a 4-year-old and at the time a 6-year-old, now my daughter's 7. And I just was having trouble finding a lot that fit that younger generation. I wanted to do that because I have kids that age, but also if our habits are formed by age 7 and we don't have a system that supports educating them, we need to get them early. And so I decided to write a book. And so I wrote this children's book called Larry the Bunny Saves His Money.
Jim forwarded me a copy of it a bit ago, and I love it. It's very practical, it's very applicable, but it's also fun and super cute. I mean, the graphics, the illustrations are really cute. The concept is that you save first. And I remember my first job, my first real job out of college, right out of the gate, I set up, and I don't remember what it was. It was not very much because I did not make, I mean, what I made was just very sad in today's numbers, but I put a little bit of money that came off the top of every paycheck went into savings first. And that's something that fortunately I learned when I was a kid. It's also something that fortunately, like my husband has a very similar approach to saving. So we always save first and then, and enjoy, I'm using my quotey fingers, right? Enjoy or spend later. So once the saving sort of piece is taken care of, and that's a habit that we started really young, but that's not something most of us learn. And that's one of the things that I love about the Larry the Bunny book. It's catchy. It has like a nice rhythm, a nice rhymes to it and everything, but it really instills all of the kind of good things that come from putting saving first.
I agree. It basically, for your listeners, Larry gets paid in carrots, and he gets paid 10 carrots a month for what he does for a living. And his dad taught him every time you work and get your pay, save 2 carrots for another day. And then he goes through different activities of life. And what's interesting is if you're a parent reading it, the actual percentages of what you should be spending on that particular activity or the amount you should be saving are quite appropriate for an adult life.
Huh.
That's not really meant for the kids. The kids look at the carrots, and as the bunny, as Larry spends his carrots, first saves his carrots, goes from 10 to 8. My 4-year-old son loves counting the carrots. So then he can count that there are 8 carrots left, and then 5 carrots after the next activity. And so kids learn in a very sequential way. Lynn, I'm not telling you anything you already know, but anyone who has kids or young kids, they learn by observing. And I think as parents, sometimes we don't give enough credit to our ability to observe what we're doing. And if you've ever accidentally said a word that you didn't want to say in front of your kids and they repeat that in the most inopportune time, then you know what I'm saying. So they learn, but it's a cause and effect. And so the idea with the book is at this stage in the game, when they're real young, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It's just that save. They're going to equate saving with earning money and saving first, just like you said. And then at the end of the book, Larry has a wonderful life. So then they equate this. If I save, I somehow have this wonderful life. Well, life doesn't always work out that way, of course, but at that age, the idea is that they just equate that cause and effect, that's a good thing because things are very habitual. And you got started early with your habits, and your kids were fortunate to have you and Steve that can teach them those things. And not everyone is that way or learned those habits from their parents. And so they have to break maybe some uncomfortable habits. And the number one reason people are successful financially, overwhelmingly, is their behavior.
Yeah.
So it's interesting when I speak in front of a group of Boy Scouts in high school or a bunch of college kids, and I just talk about basic finance 101, I ask them to raise their hand if they think this sounds simple, saving first. Every single kid or college student raises their hand and become perplexed as to why adults couldn't seem to do it. Yet it's just human behavior. We are not wired to be good with money. We're not. We have to train ourselves with discipline to do it right. So it may sound easy, and it can be if you get used to it. But if you haven't done it and you're a certain part of your life, you do have to do it with intention.
Right. Absolutely. And that's huge. You said something a minute ago. You said it sounds simple. And that's one of the things I tell my clients all the time. Like, simple doesn't always mean easy. And that's especially true with our ADHD tribe, right, guys? I mean, ADHD is rarely, something that has anything to do with what we know how to do, right? It's our ability to do it in a way that works for us. So we all know we should be saving. That's just like we all know we should eat healthy and exercise and get plenty of sleep and all of that stuff, right? But that doesn't mean it's easy. So learning how to do it, the younger you learn how to do it, the easier it is to have those behaviors. But it's still something that you can learn to do. And the Larry the Bunny model, the whole save first, take it off the top piece, is something that I encourage my adult clients to do, whether it's an entrepreneur business owner who's just getting started and trying to figure out, kind of how to set up the financial piece. Take the money off the top that you're going to owe for taxes every quarter. And that's something I did right out of the gate, right? It's much more than you expect that it's going to be. So make sure you save that first. And then you have your sort of your buckets, so to speak. But the saving first mentality is not natural. But if it's something that you can start to shift toward, and then of course, something that you can model for your kids. That's one of the things that Jim and I were talking about is, children learn what they live. They don't learn what we tell them. Like Jim said, if you've ever let it slip, as my son used to call him, no word, in front of one of your young kids, I guarantee you it's coming out at the least opportune time in front of a teacher or a grandparent or something like that, right? That they learn what they live. And so if you can start to model this behavior for your kids too, it can make a really big difference for them as well as for you. I mean, it can really be huge. The saving first concept it sounds so simple, but it's definitely not something that's easy for a lot of us.
Yeah, 100%. And it's interesting that you say that because I have this, I guess you call it this mantra for parents with younger kids of some things, simple tips you can do to teach them about money. But it also relates to adults as well. And so delay it, play it, say it, and then show it. And so what I mean by that as parents is if you delay it, just being a good parent actually instills good habits in your kids. Let me explain further. For someone to be successful financially, it's their behavior. They have to actually intentionally save first, which means they're delaying gratification of using those dollars now for another day, whether it's a rainy day in emergency savings, whether it's their home improvement in a year, buying a car, travel, or retirement, much longer time horizon. But they've gotten used to delay that gratification. It is going to be much harder for the younger generation to do that in a virtual currency world. Mm-hmm. When you take money out of your wallet that's cash, you feel that pain.
Yes.
Right? And I've tested this with clients.
Oh, for sure.
Take $1,000 or $500 and that's all you spend for a month. And then 2 weeks later, I'm getting a call. Okay, is that it? Is that all? And so, but if you use your credit card, you don't really feel it. You don't notice it. So our younger generation has to get used to understanding that delay of gratification. So if you teach them certain things, for example, my son wants to play with me every second of the day that I love him so much. I love my daughter. They're fighting for my attention when I'm not at work. And I might have just got done playing cars and trucks 20 minutes with him, but he totally forgot the last 20 minutes and now says, Dad, can you play with me, as though I wasn't just spending a certain amount of time. And so what I will say is, I'd love to give me 5 minutes, son. So he has to be patient and understand that they cannot have everything immediately. And as a parent, if you give your kids every single thing immediately, what are they going to be when they're teenagers or when they grow up? They're going to anticipate and expect that same level of behavior from every other person that walks across them in their life. And you and I know that's detrimental. So just being able to allow them to delay the gratification of something, and then you can turn that into money. That's extremely helpful. Play it. You get down on the knees and you play with your kids. My kids have a kitchen, play kitchen, right? So I'm the customer, and my daughter who's 7, my son who's 4, they run a restaurant, and the restaurant changes in the food. Oh, the wonderful food they make, from wings to cereal to pizza. And of course I'm eating it all. But there are many times that we play where I give them fake money to pay for these things. And I might not have enough money sometimes to buy all of these wonderful things they've cooked. And so that shows them a lesson that you don't always have enough money for things. Money's finite, right?
Right.
Playing cars and trucks. There's a toll road that we have that he's got to pay me for the ticket to take his truck through. Or if Barbie is going shopping, it costs money. So these are things that just bring the concept of money, and then say it is kind of why I wrote the book. Read it. Larry the Bunny Saves His Money kind of is another way to teach it. And it's okay to have a conversation about money with kids. They know we go to work. They know they live in a house. If you don't bring it up, they're going to have their own cause and effect, and with their own definition of what that is.
Right.
You bring it to them, right? And then finally show it, which is exactly what you're talking about, Lynn, which is how can you expect your kids to be financially successful if you can't do it yourself? And I think that for individuals that maybe have just had some bad choices in the past, or maybe aren't where they want to be financially, that might be listening, you know what, learn from the past and just look right now in the present and look in the forward, because you can do it. So don't focus on the past, learn from it, and then focus and put your full attention on what you can do now to start taking those steps. And then your kids will see that.
I love that. So it's delay it, play it, say it, show it.
Yeah.
I love that. I really love that. I think they're all really good lessons. I think that's a good way to remember it yourself, right? And if you don't have kids, this still applies. Learning to delay your gratification, for a lot of us, that impulse control is part of what gets us into trouble to begin with. And for most of my clients, not all, impulse control can be something that is really difficult for many people with ADHD. And it shows up really differently. You know, guys, I always say your ADHD is as unique as your thumbprint. So I've had clients who had the big financial impulsivity. Like I had a client once who bought like a multiple 6-figure business without consulting anybody, including his wife. I had another client who bought her husband a very expensive car without talking to him, and also without realizing that the lease on the last car wasn't up for quite a while yet. So some of us will have like the big impulsivity. For a lot of my clients, it's the damn dollar bin at Target. That's the problem, right? Or the, you know, the stuff on sale at the end cap, or, you know, whatever. But, and it may not be big ticket items one at a time, but it is that the lack of delay in the grabbing and the purchasing. And then we get into that whole, you know, whatever, plastic currency or virtual currency or whatever you want to call it, where you don't actually feel it until the bill comes in. And that gets a lot of us in trouble too. So practicing delaying it from a practical perspective, there are lots of different things that you can do, but one of the things that I've done for years, and I learned to do it because I used to have a problem with just, you know, mostly at this sort of stage when my kids were really little. Actually, my kids' preschool was right next door to what, I don't know if they have them all around the world or not anymore. I know they have them in sort of my part of the country, but it's like a home decor store called Tuesday Morning, and they would get new stuff in every couple of weeks or whatever. And it was right next door to the preschool. So if I was early or I was waiting, I'd pop into Tuesday Morning and, you know, $20 here, $15 there. But the next thing you know, it was really adding up. So I started this rule for myself that if it wasn't on the list of things that I intentionally was going to buy, then it had to stay in my trunk for 24 hours before I brought it into my house. And that was sort of my opportunity to really decide whether I really needed it and really wanted it. And then of course I kept the receipt with the thing so then I could take it back to the store. And that was my rule for myself. Well, eventually I kind of broke that habit, that impulse, because I started to think, is this something that I'm going to really want a week from now? Is this going to be one more thing I have to declutter? Is this going to be one more thing I don't really want to make space for in my home or whatever? But eventually that practice of delaying it broke that habit, and that sort of that pull, that impulse didn't feel so strong. There are lots of things that we can do, right? If you're saving for something from a practical perspective, I've had clients do things like, wrapping their credit card up with a clip or a rubber band or something with a picture of what they're saving for or why what they're saving for matters. So a picture of their child or a picture of the beach they want to retire on, so that it's not so easy to just swipe that card. But really finding ways to help yourself hit that pause button, delay that gratification, delay the purchase is huge. And when it comes to kids, I love the play it, right? Because I think kids learn from play, and that real play is huge. I don't know if you remember, Jim, you're a little bit younger than I am. And I think they still have the board game Life.
Yes.
It's
Yes.
interminable. I mean, it's like the endless board game that when my kids got old enough for it, I couldn't wait to buy it because I remembered it being so much fun, and it's so long. I mean, it's like special form of torture to get through that whole game sometimes, but it has those lessons built in.
Yes.
Right? Where you pick, I can't remember anymore, but I think you spin the wheel and you pick a card, and now you've got another child that you've got to pay for. And now you're handing out, you're giving out money, you're bringing money in, it's very applicable to learning how to manage money. There are other games too that are money oriented. All the Monopoly games, there are so many different options now, but those kinds of things, and then bringing your everyday play into those lessons as well. I love that, Jim, the making them pay the toll, all of the whole bringing the money conversations into your play with your kids, and then say it.
I know where that Tuesday morning is, by the way, too. That is.
It was very dangerous for me when my kids were little. I'll tell you, lots of arguments with my husband over the crap I brought in from Tuesday morning over the years. And then the show it, right? That's the one that I think is so important for those of us who are parents. It's the modeling, right? What we do is what our kids live. Our kids learn from what they see, learn from what they live much more than they do from what we tell them. So it's really powerful stuff. So delay it, play it, say it, show it. Go ahead, Jim. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Well, and that's at the early stage, and it continues. And then as they get to a point where they're earning money, whether they're working, whether you own a business and then you hire your kids to be able to have them do some filing or whatever, or whether you're choosing as a parent for certain kids to pay for allowances for certain activities, then you can set up the different jars or different buckets.
Yeah.
People have different terms, such as saving, sharing, spending. I kind of use saving, giving, and living, where you save first. Then, I do think it's important to instill at a young age the thought of giving. Mm-hmm. I do believe that to give is to receive. And not everyone is fortunate maybe to have an income that is above a living wage. Many people that are just living to make ends meet don't necessarily have the capability to put away for the future.
Right.
But those of us that do, establishing that discipline early is very helpful. And
absolutely. Saving, giving, and living. That's good. Good stuff. Anything else you want to share with our listeners?
We didn't talk about it much, but since many of your listeners, actually all of them would be adults, we talked about the Food for Retirement book that I have. And I think it is very relevant for our conversation, Lynn. This has been a labor of love for me, and it is not just about your finances. I've had thousands of conversations with people over the years about retiring, their worries, their concerns. And what I've done is I've put all of those in a culmination into a book. And so my day job, I'm providing emotional and financial clarity for life's transitions. And one of those biggest transitions is retirement. And I don't like the word retirement because it means to cease while you are ceasing employment, the most successful, happiest, healthiest retirements are people that said, I'm busier now in retirement than when I was working. And you've probably heard people say that.
Mm-hmm.
And it means that they found their purpose. They found things that give them peace and joy in their life. And that's what we're here for. We are all connected, but we all are given different skills and different things. And so in my book, I've put certain exercises up front to help people visualize that. And one of the things that I don't think gets talked about a lot, just like we were talking about how financial literacy is very difficult and there's an emptiness in that space, I also think there's a little bit of work that needs to be done on the space of people when they're thinking about retirement and that emotional transition. It is ludicrous to think that someone has spent 30 or 40 years of their life and one day they're just going to walk out the door and say, I'm a different person. and just all of a sudden change their whole identity and what they feel they are, how they've been trained and educated, how people view them. That's not how it works. And many people are afraid to talk about that emotion. I come across that a lot. My parents are retiring here and I see it firsthand with my dad. He's a very old school, strong-willed Italian man. And you know, it's been very hard for him to open up about his feelings. He's been doing something for 40 years.
Wow.
And so what we do is we blend in the book, the emotional transition and the financial. And the fruitful retirement, the fruitful is not just an emotional thought of living a fruitful life, but it also actually fits with a very simplistic way to plan for your retirement and a very complex topic. So there's always brilliance in simplicity, I say. And what we're trying to simplify a very complex topic by using fruits to do so. Every single person who is about to retire fits into one of three categories that I have found. Each category can be represented by a fruit. Our brains are very visual. So once you know the fruit you are, you will remember that. And the book will show you how to better plan and the risks you need to be thinking about and mitigating against based on the fruit that you are. So the fruitful retirement is not just creating that fruitful life, envisioning it, but also determining which fruit you are entering into retirement and how you plan for it.
That's interesting. And you said something that
Sorry,
really resonates with me.
You gave me an open-ended question.
I know.
So I kept talking. Sorry, Lynn.
No, it's all good. It's really good. And that's one of the things about the work that you do and how you do your work that really resonates with me. I'm a productivity coach, but I don't believe in improving productivity just for the sake of getting more crap done in a day. I believe that it's a vehicle to something bigger, a vehicle to what you want more of in your life, a vehicle toward the life you want for yourself and the life you're capable of living. And that's how Jim approaches finance. And that's one of the things that really attracts me to the way that he does business is it's about what you want your life to be like now and after retirement, right? And how to get yourself there in a way that, you know, isn't painful, isn't super complicated or complex, but really supports who you are and what's important to you. And I think that that's something that honestly, I think is missing when we have conversations about money. Money is a tough topic for a lot of us for a lot of reasons. I mean, it is with my clients and in my groups for a lot of reasons, and especially for people with ADHD, but really tying it to your values, what's important to you and that life you want to create for yourself, whatever it is that you want to do with that, I think is the way to make it work for so many more people more easily.
Agreed.
This is interesting. I love having you on the show. Any last thoughts for the listeners before we go our separate ways? And then tell us, of course, again, about the books, where people can learn more.
Sure. I guess last thoughts. If you're listening here and you have young kids, you're busy. You got a lot going on in your life. It's not easy. I share your struggle. And hopefully maybe this book, Larry the Bunny Saves His Money, could be a piece or an introduction to start talking about money for your kids and the delay it, play it, say it. And then the show it piece for those adults that maybe don't have kids or their kids are all grown up. You can do it. You can. Whatever has happened in your past that may have hindered where you want to be now, Don't let that detract from what you want to be, because you can do that. For those of you that have been making all the right decisions, just keep doing it. And the book, The Fruitful Retirement, for all of you adults listening, could be a very helpful step in your journey. And if you work with a financial advisor already, wonderful. I recommend that. And this can just be a tool to help you and enhance that relationship with whomever you're working with. People, if you're interested in learning more about me, JimDeGaetano.com. My name is not easily spelled. So EGAETANO, JimDeGaetano.com. Both my books are actually out on Amazon, Larry the Bunny Saves His Money and The Fruitful Retirement. So Lynne, thank you so much. I'm eternally grateful for you having me on the show, and this has been fun.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us. I know this is going to be really helpful for some of our listeners. And if you find the podcast helpful, please visit us on iTunes and leave a positive review. The more positive reviews we have, the more people who can find us. So thanks again. Thanks, Jim. Thank you all for listening. And as always, I appreciate your attention. Until next time, take care.